The views and opinions expressed in the DILLIGAF podcast are those of the host alone and are not intended to express those of any other person, business, or entity. The DILLIGAF podcast is for entertainment only. These are my opinions and should not be interpreted as facts or advice. Think for yourself.
Keeps you up at night, yeah. Make all the demons quiet, yeah. We were built to thrive, yeah. I think that we've all had enough, yeah. I think that we've all had enough. Sick of dealing with the old plan. They know that we're calling it wrong. You got me like, oh, yeah. I think that we've all had enough.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the DILLIGAF podcast, talking about anything and everything that interests me. If it makes me think, laugh, cry, scream, rage, or say what the fuck, you'll hear about it. My name's Tom. I'm your host. I want to thank everybody for watching or listening on YouTube, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure you follow, like, subscribe, share, rate, comment, all that kind of fun stuff. It really helps out the show. Make sure you're following on social media. It's at DILLIGAF_pod on all social media platforms. And you can find all that on my link tree, which is linktree/DILLIGAF_pod, or scan the little QR code right here in the corner of your screen. If you ever want to shoot me an email, it's dilligafpod@gmail.com. So this week we are continuing our series on conspiracy theories, and today we are talking about the Paul McCartney "Paul is Dead" conspiracy. Back in the 60s, there was this rumor, urban legend that Paul McCartney had died. And if you don't know who Paul McCartney is, founding member of the Beatles, probably the biggest, greatest band in the history of rock and roll. At least that's what they're widely considered to be. I happen to agree with that statement. But Paul McCartney, like I said, founding member, one of the main songwriters for the Beatles, played the bass, but basically plays any instrument you can think of. And there was this rumor started back in 1966, because that's pretty much when the Beatles started pulling back from public appearances, concerts, touring. Basically, they just got too big, and their concerts, the crowds at their concerts were so loud you couldn't hear the music. So they kind of pulled back from doing live shows and stuff like that, and focused more on recording, releasing albums, and that afforded them the opportunity to do a lot of experimenting with different effects and ways of recording music and things like that. And that kind of just added to this urban legend. Basically, what it was is this urban legend said that Paul McCartney was killed in a car accident in 1966 in November or September, depending on who you ask, and was replaced with a lookalike. And the lookalike's name supposedly was, I believe it was William Shepard, but was called Billy Shears. That'll become important here in a couple of minutes. And this was done by the Beatles with help of MI5, which is basically the British version of the CIA. Because they felt there would be such a public panic or public grief that it would just have such a huge effect on Great Britain that MI5 got involved and helped the Beatles to cover up Paul McCartney's death. Wild shit. I mean, that's basically the equivalent of the CIA helping to cover up the death of like Michael Jackson or something, and put a replacement out there for him. I mean, think about it in those kind of terms. What? Are you serious? But the Beatles kind of played into this. They saw how big this was getting. I mean, this urban legend just spun out of control, and of course went all over the world. Paul is dead, and they put all people. I mean, people were finding hints where there really were none, but the Beatles also played into it with some of their music and their album artwork and things like that. And I'll get into that first. Some of the album covers. The most famous one to go along with this rumor is Abbey Road. And Abbey Road album cover, if you've never seen it, is basically the Beatles walking in a single file line crossing a street, Abbey Road. But the order that they're walking and the way that they're dressed was heavily scrutinized. John Lennon is at the front wearing all white, supposedly to represent God. Then you've got Ringo Starr dressed in all black. He's supposed to be the Undertaker. Then you've got Paul McCartney in a suit, barefoot, supposed to represent the corpse, because I guess I don't know if it was unique to the UK, but bodies were not buried with shoes on. They were buried barefoot. And also he was holding a cigarette in his right hand, but Paul McCartney's left-handed. So people said that's, oh, that's not Paul McCartney. That's his replacement. And also Paul McCartney is out of step with the other three Beatles on the album cover. They're all leading with, I believe it's their right foot, and Paul McCartney's leading with his left foot. So he's out of step with the rest of them, saying that he's not really there. He's dead. And then coming up at the end is George Harrison dressed in all denim, supposed to be a gravedigger. So a lot of people took that, as a sign that Paul McCartney had died. And then in the background of this picture, there's a Volkswagen Beetle. I think it was a Volkswagen Beetle with a license plate. And the way people interpreted this license plate, I mean, it's a bit of a stretch. The license plate is LMW 281F. People interpreted LMW to mean Linda McCartney Weeps or Linda McCartney Widow, of course, the wife of Paul McCartney. The only problem is when Abbey Road came out, they weren't married yet. Actually, they hadn't even met yet. And then the 281F, people read that as 28IF, which is 28 if, saying that Paul McCartney would have been 28 if he was still alive, except he was only 27 when Abbey Road came out. So doesn't really work with the license plate thing. The thing with the funeral procession with the guys walking across the street, that's definitely I think that is definitely the Beatles just having some fun with this rumor. Then another one is Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. The back cover of that one has all of the Beatles together in their little Sgt. Pepper uniforms, but Paul McCartney has his back turned to the camera on the back cover of Sgt. Pepper. And again, people took that as a sign that Paul's not really there. He's dead. Then another one was Magical Mystery Tour. They're all dressed like different animals on the cover, and you can't really tell who's who. And right in front and center, the person is dressed kind of differently than everybody else. Like everybody else had, the three in the back have on white costumes, and the one in the front is black and is a walrus, basically. And this kind of led to this thing where people were saying, oh, walrus is a symbol of death in Greek, and I think it was Eskimo symbology or whatever you want to call it, mythology. That's the word I was looking for, which it's not. The walrus is not a symbol of death in any mythology anywhere. That was completely made up. I mean, research that one for yourself. The walrus is not a symbol for death. But somehow that got put out there, and again, the Beatles decided to have some fun with that. And then there's another album they put out, it's called Yesterday and Today. Now, the original cover of this album is very controversial. They called it the Butcher cover. It was the Beatles dressed up like butchers with the white coats and everything, but then they had like hacked up baby dolls all over and bloody and stuff like that. I find it kind of funny because it's a doll, it's not a real baby. But it was very controversial at the time, so they put out a new album cover, which I actually have a copy of this album with the revised cover, and it's basically the Beatles, John Lennon, Ringo, George Harrison around a trunk turned up on its end, and it's open, and Paul McCartney is sitting in the trunk. Well, people said that symbolizes Paul in a coffin, and I mean, if you turn it sideways, yeah, okay, it looks like he's in a coffin. Again, I think that's just the Beatles having some fun and screwing with people. Quite honestly, both of those covers, I think, is the Beatles having fun and screwing with people. And then in some of their song lyrics, again, the Beatles just kind of, as the British would say, taking the piss out of people. The song Glass Onion, there's a line, the walrus was Paul, and saying that on Magical Mystery Tour, he was the one, in the walrus outfit. And what else do we got? The song Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. There's the line, let me introduce to you the one and only Billy Shears. And Billy Shears, the replacement for Paul McCartney. So, and then on the White Album, there's a song called Revolution 9, and the Beatles did a lot of experimenting with different stuff, different techniques, different ways of recording, different effects on their songs. And so the song Revolution 9 is very trippy. There's really no lyrics to it except for you can hear John Lennon's voice throughout the song just repeating number 9, number 9, number 9, number 9. And if you play that backwards, a lot of people say you can hear it saying "Turn me on, dead man." And if you go on, if you go on Wikipedia and you look up Paul's Dead, the conspiracy theory, it has a short recording of Revolution 9 forwards and backwards. And yeah, it does kind of sound like that's what he's saying, but it's very fast, and obviously it's the English language backwards, so it sounds distorted. He's saying number 9, number 9, number 9, but if you play it backwards, it sounds like "Turn me on, dead man, turn me on, dead man." So, and again, this is stuff that the Beatles did. I firmly believe did on purpose, putting little stuff like that in their music for people to find, and just to screw with people, because they knew people were going to scrutinize everything that they put out, because they were looking for clues, quote unquote, about Paul McCartney. Um, Another song, "A Day in the Life," talks about a guy getting, dying in a car accident, and that's people think that's about Paul McCartney. One of the lines, he blew his mind out in a car. He didn't notice that the light had changed. Um, and supposedly that's how Paul McCartney died. He was driving and he got distracted by a meter maid, and that's where the song "Lovely Rita" comes from. And got into a car accident, was basically decapitated. I mean, horrific the way that this is described in this urban legend. He's basically literally lost his head in a car accident. And in the song "Strawberry Fields," there's a little line at the very end of the song that people swear up and down it's John Lennon saying, "I buried Paul." John Lennon himself came out and said the line is "cranberry sauce." He just says "cranberry sauce" randomly at the end of the song because he's John Lennon. He can do whatever the hell he wants. Possibly, one of the top 3 greatest songwriters of all time. If he wants to say cranberry sauce, he's going to say cranberry sauce. But people swear they heard "I buried Paul." Uh, another song that people say they can hear things in when they play it backwards is "I'm So Tired." You play it backwards, supposedly it says "Paul is dead man, miss him, miss him." This one I haven't heard myself. I need to see if I can find a recording of this backwards so I can see what it sounds like, because I'm not going to scratch up one of my records trying to play it backwards. Sorry, just not going to do it. So I can't confirm that one. The Revolution 9 one I was able to find online, and yeah, it sounds like it's saying "Turn me on, dead man" when you play it backwards. But I mean, the Beatles were such icons in their own time. I mean, they were the biggest band in the world in in the 60s, basically from the time they hit the scene until the time they split up in 1970. They were the biggest band in the world. Sold millions upon millions of albums, made ridiculous amounts of money. And my opinion, they were the greatest rock band in history ever. And I'm not even sure where this urban legend started, like how or why, like who was the first person to say Paul McCartney died in a car accident in 1966. I'm not even sure. The first record of it was in some book that somebody wrote, and but I mean, they even did a live television special going through all the evidence. I think it was with F. Lee Bailey, who was like a very famous attorney. Um, did an hour-long TV special just going through all the supposed evidence of Paul McCartney being dead, and kind of left it up to the viewers to decide what they believe. Is Paul McCartney alive or is he dead? I'm gonna solve this for all of you guys right now, guys. Paul McCartney's alive. He's still making music. He still tours, and he's old as hell, but he still tours and still plays. And I mean, but it just kind of goes to show you how a rumor can just snowball and how people will look for things that aren't there or take things that are there and completely twist them to mean something totally different that they were never intended to mean. I mean, like I said, I think that with the Abbey Road album cover, I think that was the Beatles having some fun with the people who bought into this, because I mean, yeah, the symbolism there with the way they're dressed and how they're walking. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty obvious that it's, a funeral procession. You've got God, the Undertaker, the dead person, and the gravedigger. That's I mean, it's pretty much in your face. The thing with the license plate is a bit of a stretch. I don't know if that was on purpose, because like I said, the LNW thing, Linda McCartney and Paul were not even, if I remember correctly from what I read, they had not even met at the time Abbey Road was made. So, but unless they were foretelling the future, it, no, it does not stand for Linda McCartney weeps. And the 28 if, I'm sorry, it's 281F. It's just a license plate number, folks. Sorry to disappoint anybody, but that's just what it is. And the Sergeant Pepper thing, Paul with his back to, I think they had, with this rumor going around, I honestly believe the Beatles just kind of took it and ran with it and kind of said, okay, how can we screw with these people with Paul on this album cover or on this song? So on Sergeant Pepper, they had Paul with his back to the camera. I'm like, oh, people, and they're probably saying people are going to go crazy over that. Paul's not looking at the camera. That means he's dead. And the yesterday and today, oh, Paul, sit in the trunk. They're going to say it looks like you're in a coffin or maybe they didn't know that was going to happen, but it's still, they put Paul in some kind of strange position as compared to the other three Beatles and kind of let people's imaginations run wild with them because obviously he wasn't dead. And I mean, there's people out there that have done like photo analysis, like, oh, he doesn't look the same in this picture from 64 and this picture from 82. Well, yeah, he's 20 some years older, 18 years older, whatever. But people change, they gain weight, they lose weight, they get haircuts, they grow their hair, they get old, they people change. It happens over time. But even like somebody will, they'll look at a picture of McCartney from like 1965 and then one from like 1968, and they'll say he's significantly different. While he looks similar, but it's not the same person. And then they'll go through all this technical analysis and everything. Oh, the nose isn't the same in the ears, and dude, it's Paul McCartney. It's not Billy Shears. I promise. It's Paul. I'm alive. He said so himself. He said it. I'm alive. I'm not dead. I mean, come on. Chris Farley asked him on Saturday Night Live, like, oh, you remember the whole Paul is dead thing? That was a hoax, right? And Paul's like, yeah, I wasn't really dead. Well, see, Chris Farley solved it, way back then. I think that was in the 90s sometime. Rest in peace to Chris Farley. But this is one of those, when I first started talking about conspiracy theories, I said some of them are plausible and can really make you think like, oh, okay, that that could have happened. And some of them are just flat out ridiculous, like this one. Because to say that MI5 cared that much about whether people were grieving over a dead rock star, no, just no. I, it's since we're talking about the UK, it's not like we're talking about the Queen dying and covering up her death, or something like, or any member of the royal family. That MI5 getting involved in and covering it up and bringing in a look-alike body double, whatever. Okay, I can see that. A member of the royal family or a member of parliament, the government, whatever. Okay, I could see that happening here in America with the CIA too. I mean, who the hell knows? But to no, just no, come on. And then the stuff with the album cover, if they did go to all that trouble to cover up the man's death and bring in a lookalike to replace him so that people wouldn't just shut down from grieving. The whole country shut down, the economy turned to shit because of one man's death. If they go through all that, why the hell would they start dropping hints? And people say, oh, they started dropping hints because they felt guilty for doing it. And they felt like they dishonored Paul by covering it up and replacing him. But again, if MI5 is involved, basically like the CIA or the FBI, the UK equivalent of the American CIA or FBI, if they're involved and they went through all this trouble to cover up this death and bring in a lookalike, a stand-in, a replacement, whatever you want to call it, do you think they would allow the remaining Beatles to start dropping hints and letting people know? No. You would have seen 3 more dead Beatles. I mean, come on. Common sense. Common sense ain't so common. I realize that. But this is just one of those, to me, that is utterly ridiculous. It's interesting. Some of the, some of this stuff, if you look it up, I mean, there are entire websites dedicated to this with all this stuff listed out, and some stuff I didn't even talk about here. But I mean, just Google Paul is dead and you will find all these websites and social media pages and all this stuff just completely dedicated to this conspiracy theory that Paul McCartney died in 1966, and it's been covered up since then. And yeah, this is one I gotta say, it's just completely ridiculous. Some of the stuff's very creative, and like I said, I honestly believe the Beatles use this to screw with people through album covers and song lyrics and little subliminal stuff that they put in their music, because they were having fun with it, and they knew the more they put in like that, more stuff they put out like that, the more people were going to buy it. And I'm sorry, it's a great marketing strategy. I mean, the Beatles were some of the greatest musicians to ever live. They didn't need, a gimmick, quote unquote, to sell records, but it damn sure didn't hurt. Like I said, I think they were having fun with it. So that's pretty much my take on this one. That's gonna wrap it up. I know it's kind of a short episode this week compared to the JFK episode last week, but yeah, tell me what you guys think. Drop me a message, drop me something in the comments, shoot me an email, send me a DM, send me a tweet or whatever. Let me know what you guys think about this one. And if you are one who believes Paul McCartney did die in 66 and it's been a replacement living his life ever since then, tell me about it. Tell me why you believe it. I'm honestly interested to hear. I'm not trying to ridicule anybody or anything like that, because I think this is just too outlandish to be true, that a government agency and a rock band are working together to cover up a death and replace the guy because they're afraid the country is going to grieve too much. So if you believe this, tell me why. What convinced you that this is true? I'm genuinely curious if there is anybody out there who really does believe this urban legend. But with that, I think I'm gonna sign off for today. So again, I want to thank everybody for watching or listening on YouTube, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast from. Make sure again to follow, like, subscribe, share, rate, comment, all that kind of fun stuff. Follow on social media. It's at DILLIGAF pod on all, at DILLIGAF_pod on social media platforms. And you can find all that and links to all the podcast pages and everything like that on my link tree, which is linktree/DILLIGAF_pod, or scan the QR code right there in the corner of the screen. It'll take you to all the links and all that kind of fun stuff. And again, shoot me an email, dilligafpod@gmail.com. Let me know, like I said, let me know what you guys think of this one. If you're a believer in this one, I want to hear about it. Like, genuinely, I want to know what convinced you that this is true. Let me know. But yeah, with that, I'm going to sign off. We got one more conspiracy theory show coming up next week, and I still haven't fully decided on which one, but I'm leaning towards the New World Order right now. That's one that I find very fascinating just because of the scope of it. So tentatively, we'll be talking about the New World Order next week. But until then, again, thank you to everybody for watching. And if anyone has any issues with anything that I have said here today, ask yourself one question. Do I look like I give a fuck?